Welcome to another episode. In today's episode, I am going to be teaching you how to create a website using HTML and CSS. This is the final chapter for our CSS course, and it's coming with a project. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you like my video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. And if you want to get notified every time that I upload a new video, make sure to hit that ring bell. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so let me teach you first and foremost the website that we are going to be building today. This is the website. Let me hit refresh. Okay, so this is the website that you guys are going to be coding today with me. Okay, so this website, as you can see, is very simple. It has a nav bar, then you have a top banner with a logo, and then some text. Then if you scroll a little bit down and you go to the home section, this portion right here is the home section. It has a header and it has a video which automatically plays as soon as we get into the website. Then if you go to the about section, we have an image, and right next to the image you're going to see some text as well. Then we can scroll a little bit down, or you can go on top and click services, and in our services section you are going to see a couple of services provided by this marketing company. This is just an example, so the company itself doesn't exist. Not sure if the one on the video exists, because I just randomly picked that video on YouTube, just so you know. Okay, now after the services section, we have the contact us section, and this is going to have a quick Google map. It's going to have the hours of operations of the company and a little form so that you can go ahead and actually allow the users to send some information. And then if you scroll a little bit down, you're going to have a footer with some information in 4 sections. We are going to have useful links, which work. If I go to about section, it'll take me to about. If I go to services, then it'll take me to services, so on and so forth. Then it has a quick location, and it has some contact info. We have there 2 phone numbers. So this is what we're going to be coding today. Now, if I go ahead and I resize this and I make it look like a mobile, then it'll go, if I go ahead and I shrink my window, it's going to have some media queries and some breakpoints that is going to allow the website to resize and change its form according to the view of the device that you are using, okay? Especially if it's a tablet or a phone, right? So this is how it's going to look like on a tablet or a phone, okay? There you go. So I hope that you are excited to get started with this tutorial today, because this is going to give you a foundation if you are an absolute beginner in how to code your own website. Now remember, we're starting here with baby steps. You're going to start with baby steps, so then you can go ahead and actually make your own website. You can make this website totally awesome, and you can go ahead and add animations to it. You can add way much more, right? But for me today, my goal is to make sure that you have a foundation to code your website. Now, I'm doing this my way. This is my way of doing a beginner's website. I know that some people out there might have different ways to do this, but this is just the way that I'll do it, okay, if I'm beginning. So I'm also going to be using some information that we have learned so far in the course, so I know that you're going to be familiar with it if you have been studying a lot. So without further ado, let's get started coding this website. First thing I'm going to do, it's let's go ahead and let's open a new tab here in Google. I'm going to close the marketing agency website. Or in fact, you know what? Let's just leave it open. Let me go back to the folder where I have the website in. I am going to go to this folder. It's called CSS, and then this is the website, okay? So I'm just going to keep the website open. I'm just going to pause the video. And I'm just going to have this website open so that we can have a reference and that we can see how we want this website to look like. Now, in addition to this, we have been working with a folder in this course. So let me go back to my home menu. This is the folder that we have created since the beginning of the course. It's called CSS course. So what I am going to do is delete all the information inside of this folder, because I want you to see from scratch how we are doing this, okay? So I just deleted all the information in there. And in fact, let's just delete completely the folder. Okay, perfect. So now we do not have the folder anymore. Let me just empty my recycle bin here. Okay, so first thing you're gonna do to code this website is step 1, create the folder where you're going to be saving your information. So you go ahead and you give a right click, select new, create a folder, and we're going to name this project CSS, okay? Just like that. Now we are going to open Visual Studio Code, okay? So once you have the Visual Studio Code editor open, you go to the File section and you are going to hit here where it says Open Folder. Now in here, you're going to select the Project CSS folder because that's the one that we're going to be using. So let's select that one. And now we are going to create 2 files in here, okay? The first one is going to be called index, lowercase, index.html. And the other one is going to be called, let's just click here, style.css. Okay, so now we have these 2 files that we are going to be working with. Now, in addition to this, in the project CSS section, I want to add an images folder because as you can see in this website, we have a couple of images here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's create that folder. If you see here the plus button, it says new folder. So you can click there and you can add a folder called images. I'm just going to input this in here. Okay, perfect. So now if you go back to your desktop, you're going to see here the project CSS with 2 new files, index and style, and then the images folders that we just created. Okay, so what's the first thing that you have to do in order to create a website like the one that I just put on the example? Well, the one that I created has 7 sections, okay? As you can see here, it has a nav bar. Then the second section that you will see in here, it has like a top banner where you can include the logo and you can include some text. Then you will have the home section, which is this one right here. Then you have the about section, which is this one. Then you scroll down and you have services. Then you have contact us. And the 7th section will be the footer right here. Okay, so that's why there are 7. So if you count them, you have 1. Okay, that's the nav bar. Then the second one is the banner. The third one is the home section. The 4th one is the about section. The 5th one is the services. The 6th one is the contact us section. And finally, the 7th section is the footer. So it's 7 sections that we're going to be working with right now. And I am going to get started with section number 1, which is the top nav bar. Okay. So to do this, let's go back to our code. Okay, the first thing that I want to set up on my HTML file, this one right here, is let's just go ahead and do a template. Okay, so it's gonna be the doc type HTML. You just go ahead and you type in an exclamation sign and then you hit enter, and Visual Studio Code will give you automatically a template so that you can start coding your website. Okay, you can go ahead and you can adjust it later on as you prefer, but this is the one that I use to get started. Now the title here of this website is not going to be document. I am going to change this to marketing agency. Okay, that is going to be the title I'll give to this website. So let's hit save. And now we're going to open this website. To open the website, we're going to go back to our project CSS folder and we're going to double click on the index file. So you see now it has marketing agency, the name of the title. Okay. And this is the other one that we were working with. As you can see, this is the marketing agency. Okay. So to get started with the nav bar, we already added a title. Let me go ahead and let's start playing around with the body section. But well, first let's go ahead and let's make sure that we link the style sheet that we have here. So whatever style that we are giving to our HTML document, it's applied from the sheet, from the style.css sheet. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to use the link, and then let's say that this is a style sheet, and the reference will be style.css. Okay, so with this, we are linking this style sheet to our HTML file. So now these two files have been linked. So I'm going to hit save, and now let's just make sure we test this out. Let's say that to the body section, let's make it black. Make sure that you are the background color is black. Make sure that you test your code to make sure that everything is linked and working properly. As you can see, I gave a background color of black and it's working perfectly. So, okay, I'm going to delete this. This means that we have linked the style sheet properly. Okay, so we're going to start working with an empty sheet. So let's start with the nav bar. I am going to make some comments on this code just so that you guys can have a clear step-by-step process in how to do it. Okay, so let me just add here. Let me make sure I add here number where we're going to start with the nav bar. Okay, so the nav bar. This is what we're going to be starting with. Okay, so to start with the nav bar, first thing I'm going to do is add a division. And this division is going to have a class, and let's call it top nav. Okay, it's meaning top nav bar. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, inside of this top nav, we have some links, right? Let's give them a reference. This is going to be the home. Let's make sure that we type in home. Okay. Now I'm going to copy this because we have here, let's go back to our example, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 4 links here that we want to add, okay? Going back to our code, let's do that. So 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Okay, now this one, it's not home. The next one, it should be about. Then we have services, and then we have the contact tab. Okay, and I'm also going to, on the href, this href is going to take us to that exact position on the website, or that exact location on the website, depending on what we give here, right? We typically leave them in a hashtag, but I know for sure that to my divisions, I'll give them this ID so that they can go exactly to the location that I want. And that's the reason I'm adding, and I'm actually changing them right now, just to remember. So this is going to be about, this is going to be services, and this final one will be contact. Okay, now I'm going to hit save, going back to our code, refresh. Boom, so now we have the 4 links, right? Okay, so this is the top nav bar. What I'm gonna do first is just add all the entire content so that you can see all the content on HTML, and then we're going to start styling it on CSS. Hope that makes sense. Anyways, if you have questions, remember that you can always ask them in the comment section below. Okay, so this is going to be the nav bar. Now, the next thing we are going to add in here, let me add a note for this. We are going to, okay, we're going to start with the first grid container, which is going to be the top banner. Okay, and this top banner section, just so you know which one is it, is this one that has the logo, and then it has this text in there. Okay, this is going to be the top banner. So to add this, I'm also going to create a division. Let's give this a class because we're going to need this of grid, and let's call it grid container. And this is going to be our first grid container, okay? Because we're going to code this website using the grid. Okay, so we have there the container. Now, let's see. Inside we have, well, we have this picture, and then we have the welcome to the marketing agency website project, which is the text, right? So first, let's go ahead and let's find the images. On CSS, on the images folder, I already have all those images saved, and this is the one that we are going to be using. So I'm going to simply copy all the images, which again, I already looked them up in the web. You know, you can change the images if you want. You will have to style them a little bit different depending on the images dimension, so just keep in mind that. But these are the images that I have right now that I'm going to work with. So I'm copying all these images and I'm going to paste them into our project CSS folder under the images folder. There we go. So so perfect. We have here all the images. In fact, let me just double check something real quick here. Yeah, perfect. So we do have, okay, this one we are not going to use it. I think I left one that we are not going to use. So let me just delete the one that it's Google Chrome. How do you know this one is from Google Chrome? Because if you go to properties, you see here it opens with Google Chrome. That means that this is not an image. If you go to the properties of this one tells you that this is a JPEG image. That's the type of file. And this one is a Google Chrome HTML document. So this is the one we're going to delete. Okay, let's just remove that one. Okay, perfect. So now I have images into my folder, right? So let's go back to our code. So the first grid container, what do I want it to do is to have, let's take a look at the website example. Well, we want them to have two divisions, right? Two items, because we have one item is going to be controlling the image, and then the other one is going to be controlling the marketing agency. I mean, all the letters right there. So the way I'll do it is the following. I'm going to add a div. Okay, and I'm going to give this div a class of item 1-1. Why? Because I'm not only going to create one div, I'm going to create several of them. So I cannot just name it item 1, item 2, item 3. Then it's going to create a mess if I start, you know, styling each one of them, because item 1 will probably give the style to everything else. So anyways, div class 1 item 1-1, that's going to be the first div, which means that this is going to be my first item inside of this grid container. Now inside of this division, I'm going to add the image. Okay, now the image, let's see, the image source, I put it on images, images, and then the one that I'm going to be using, it's called logo.png. Why logo.png? Because if you go to our folder here, okay, hold on, let me go to our images folder on the project CSS. So this image it's called logo, and it's a PNG file, so that's why it's logo.png. Anyways, Visual Studio Code, if you already have all your images into your images folder, it's going to give you some suggestions so that you can go ahead and you can actually just select the image without thinking much what was the image name. And also what I did is call the images or name them accordingly to the section that I am working with. Hope that makes sense. If not, leave your questions below. Okay, so now we have added an image in here. Now the next thing we're going to do is add another item. Okay, and to make sure that we know this is an item, I'm going to give it a class of item 1-2. Okay, item 1-2, and this item has this text right here. This item is the one that contains all these letters right here. So how do I add those letters here? Well, I used an H1. Okay, and now to this H1, I'm going to give it an inline style. Okay, I'm going to do style because I want the color to be, whoops. I want the color to be white. Although if I style this right now, you're not going to be able to see it because our background color is white right now. So I'm not going to style it just yet. So we're going to add an H1, and then let's see. To this H1, I am going to say welcome to the marketing agency project. Okay, there you go. So welcome to the marketing agency project. Now I'm going to hit save. Now I should be able to see an image, and I'm also should be able to see the welcome to the marketing agency project without any type of style. We are not styling just yet, right? We're just adding HTML to our example. So let's go back to our example page. Let's hit refresh, and boom, you see now I have the image. Now I have the H1 I just added in there. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do, we have section 1, and then we have section number 2. Now we're going to section number 3, this section right here, which is the home section. Okay, let's scroll a little bit down, and let's go back to our code. Okay, so to this section, this is going to be grid container home. Okay, so this is going to be our second grid container. So here, I better add a note so that we don't get confused. Okay, so this is going to be, let's say, first grid container. So second grid container, and then this one is going to be home. Okay, there we go. So to this division, I am not going to add the container just yet. The first thing I want to do is just add a normal division, and I want to give this an ID of home. Okay, ID is going to be home. Why am I doing this, and why am I not setting up this as my first grid container? It's because whenever I want the people to hit home, it'll take them to this division with the ID of home. That's why it's hashtag and then home. I hope that makes sense. If not, just leave your questions below. I can clarify any doubts you might have. Okay, so now we have the home ID, okay? And now we are going to add, let's see here. Let's go to the other side. Whoops. Okay, here. So now we have here a header, and then we have the video. Okay, so into our code, after adding this, I'm going to add the H1 first. I'm not going to add just yet the container, which is going to be the second container. I'm just going to add an H1, and I am going to give it a class of header home because we're going to style this afterwards. Okay, and let me see, what does it says here? It says our PPC methods are a mile away. Okay, so let's paste that in there. This is the H1. Okay, our PPC methods are a mile away. Perfect. So now I'm going to hit save, going back to our page here. Let's hit refresh, and boom, now we have another input right there. Okay, so after adding this H1, the next thing I want to do is now add the grid container. This is going to be our second div container. So div, let's add it a class of grid container. See, it gives me here the suggestion of grid container 1, but this one is going to be grid container 2. And I'm going to explain to you later why am I not using just one grid container other than just naming different grid containers. Okay, you'll see that later on. So this is going to be grid container number 2. Okay, and inside of this grid container, I want to add one item, And the only item this grid container is going to have is going to be the iframe. And I am going to give it a class, okay? So let's do that right now. Let's input a div in here. Oops, div. Okay, and this one is going to be having a class of item. So this is going to be item 2-1 because it's the first item of my second grid container. That's why grid container 2, item 1 on it. And this is actually the only one it's gonna have. Okay, so in here, I need to copy the iframe of this video that we have here, because this is an iframe. So how do you get an iframe? I'm going to go to YouTube here. It's very simple. Let me show you right now. So to get the iframe, you're going to hit here. 1 second till it loads. Okay, perfect. So you can click here where it says share, and now you're going to click here where it says embed. Okay, and this is the iframe. Here you see it says start at 04. Well, I mean, you can go ahead and you can select whether to show the players or not show the players, etc., or where this is going to start. So what you have to do is copy this iframe code and you're going to paste that in here. Okay, now what I am going to do, since I already had the initial iframe I used here on a notepad, I'm going to use this one right here. Okay, this is the iframe I will be using for my YouTube video, for the YouTube video example that I have here. If you want to use another YouTube video, that's fine. You can go ahead and do so. Or change the content of this website, that's fine. You can do it as well. Okay, so going back to our code, let's go ahead and let's use the code that I already wrote down in there. Okay, perfect. So now let's hit save. Going back to our website here, let's hit refresh. And boom, you see, now we have the video. We have everything added in our home section, which is our second grid right now. Okay, so far we're moving real well. What I do have to do here is make sure that everything is being indented properly. So let me just make sure I don't give too many spaces, just so that we don't get confused, okay? Okay, just like that, it's nice. So let's hit save, making sure nothing changed. Okay, perfect. So far so good. We have already added all the HTML content here for our second grid container. Now let's go to our third grid container. Let's go back to the website example. Whoops, let's close this thing right here. Okay, so in this website example, the next container we're going to have is going to be the about section. You see, this is the about section. I click about, it'll take me here. So this is going to be the about section. Now, in order for me to go ahead and style this about section, well, not style it, but add it in HTML, I'll need this image, okay? Now this image, I pasted already into our folder. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, this is the other folder. In fact, you know what? Let me just close this many windows that I have open here. Let's see. Where is the other folder? Let me close this one as well. Okay, so this is the folder. Okay, so this is the image that we're going to be using. Okay, so this image is called people. So just remember that. Okay, let's go ahead and let's add the next one, which is going to be the third grid container. Okay, so let's make a note first here. Okay, so this is the third grid container, and this is the about section. Okay, perfect. So in this about section, again, let's make a div with an ID of about, so that when we click in the about link, it'll take us in here. Okay, perfect. So we already have that div. Now the next thing we're going to do is add the grid container. Okay, so let's do that. So div, we're gonna give it a class of grid container, but this is going to be our third one, right? Okay, so this is our third grid container, and this grid container is going to have, let me see, it's going to have two items. This is item 1 and this is item 2, because this one has the image and then this second item will have the text. So it's 2 items only. So let's go ahead and add that one. So the grid container has the first item. So let's give it a div, a class of item 3-1, which is the first one for the grid container number 3. And in this one, we're going to add the image. Let's add an image. And this image is going to have the class of people. The people. And the source of the image is going to be located on images. Whoops. Images. Okay, images, and is going to be this one called people. Okay, there we go. So now we just added the image. Now let's hit save. Going back to our code, to the test website. Let's see here. Let's hit refresh. And we should have, oh yeah, it's huge. Okay, so we have the people image already inserted here in our third grid. Okay, now in addition to this, it has a second item we set. Okay, so let's go ahead and add that item. This is going to be the item, let's give it a class of item 3-2, which is the second item for grid container number 3. Okay, and in here we have some text. So let's see. Okay, we have this text right here. If you want this to be looking exactly like it is on this example, I am going to have to use some breaks to make sure that we give some space to each one of these, and then more breaks here, and then probably a different style here to this section. Okay, so let's do that. So first thing, it says, let me see. Okay, I'm going to copy all the text. I'm going to paste it here. And what I want is all this to be inside of our division. Okay. Now, this division needs, this text needs to have a different style. So it's going, let's go ahead and make it an H3. And we're going to give this H3 a class of head 3. Just because it's a header number 3, something like that. Okay, and let's cut this and paste it below. Okay, perfect. So if I go ahead and I save this just like this and I do not give a space between each one of them, you might think that it already has a space. And if you already have studied my CSS, my HTML course, you know what's missing here. But if I go ahead and I hit save, let me show you on the other website, and I hit refresh, you see how everything, it has been ordered in one line. It doesn't wrap. Well, to make this wrap, we need to make sure that after each sentence, we add a break. Okay? So that way, each one will be in a different line. You will see what I'm talking about in just a moment. There we go. So now I'm going to hit save. Going back here, let's hit refresh. And boom, you see, now this has been organized in the way that we see it on the website. Just right there. In fact, let me just make sure. Okay, so business, 40 years. Okay, perfect. Yep, that looks well. Now, once we've done this, I can see here. Let me see. Okay. So on the example website, there are a couple of line breaks, and then you will see this text in here. Brian Doe, CEO of the marketing agency. Okay, so we're going to add a couple of line breaks. I think I added only two line breaks here. So let's do that. Let's add one, and then let's add two line breaks. And then here I want to add a paragraph. And this paragraph, the style of this paragraph, you know what, let's just make it look a little bit better. Okay, so Brian, and then Doe, then let's give a break, and then CEO, let's give another break, of the marketing agency. Okay, and one final break. So let's see how this looks like. So let's hit save. Going back to our test code, let's hit refresh. And wow, great. So we see here the letter is different because I added into my HTML. I made it with a different format, as you can see here. That's why the eyes have been added in there, just to give it a little bit of a different format than the one that you saw on top. You see this one's right here? This is because for this is an H3. Now this one, it's a paragraph with italic, the format of this. So there you go. Okay, so now we have added this into our about section. Let me see what else. What else do we need into our about section? Well, I don't think we need anything else in our about section. I mean, this is pretty much it in the about section. I try to make this website as simple as possible. So let's move on to the next section, which is going to be services. Okay, so to services, let me see here. To services, I want to add pay-per-click, social media, and SEO. But it has this text right here, our services. So let me make sure I include that as well into our code. Okay, so to do that, let's see, which is the third grid. Okay, so the about section, it ends here. See? Yep, it ends here. So the next section. The next section is going to be the grid number 4, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yeah, third grid. So this is going to be grid number 4. So let me just make sure I notate this in here, just so that we don't forget. Okay, so fourth grid, and I'm going to see for grid container. Okay, so for grid container, this one will be services. Okay, perfect. So to add the services section, same thing. We're going to give it an ID to the first division, and we're going to name it services. Okay, and then once services has been created, the next thing we're going to do is include another division. And let's see here. This cannot be the container just yet. I don't want to make this the container. I want this 3 to be in containers, but not the our services text. Okay, we're going to make this in a different division. So let's do that. I'm going to go ahead and say div with the class of top div services. Okay. I want this to have an H1 because the letters, it looks like they're big, and we're gonna give this a services 1 class, and we're going to say our services, which is, I believe, what's written in there. So let's hit save. Going back to our code right now, we don't have anything after that. Let's hit refresh, and boom, here now we have our services in there. Okay, now let's go ahead and add these 3 items. Now we need a grid container for these 3 items right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and add them. Already added the division for our services. Now let's make sure that we add a division here as well with a class of grid container number 4. Okay, and this one is going to have 3 items in it. Okay, so let's make sure that we add all of them in there. Okay, so the first div is going to have a class of h3. Let's see here. We have been naming them. Let's see. We have been naming them item for grid 4, number 1. Okay, so this is the first item for grid 4. Then let's add another div. Let's just add all of them. And then the class for this one is going to be grid. Whoops, is going to be item. Item for grid 4, number 2. Okay, and then a third item. And this one right here is going to be given a class of item for grid 4, number 3. Okay, perfect. So, okay, we're all set with the 3 items that we want our grid to have. Right now, you won't see anything if I hit save and I go back to the side and I hit refresh, because we haven't added any type of content into the item, which is what I am about to do just right now. Okay, so to the first item, the first thing that we want to do is add a, let's see. We want to add a header, okay, for all 3 titles, because we have here pay-per-click, social media, and SEO. All 3 are headers, okay? So we're going to add an H3 in all of them so that you can go ahead and actually see how this works, okay? So let's do that right now. The first div is going to have an H3, and the class of this H3 is going to be H3, let's call it for grid 4, for all items on grid 4. Okay, and this one is going to say pay-per-click. And I want to do the exact same thing. I'm not going to change the class because we're going to style all 3 of these the same. So I'm going to copy this code and I'm going to paste it into item 2 and to also item 3. Now I'm going to change obviously the text. This one says social media instead of pay-per-click for item 2, and the third one says SEO. Okay, so let's change this one as well. Let's hit save. Going back to our page, let's hit refresh. Whoops, not this one. Okay, it's this one. Let's hit refresh. And boom, now we have pay-per-click, social media, and SEO, which are for all 3 of our grid items in there. Now, after this, each one of them has a picture, as you can see. So we also want to include each one of these pictures. I'm pretty sure that I saved them as pay-per-click, social media, I've abbreviated as SMM, and then SEO as SEO. So let's search for them into our images folder. And there you go, pay-per-click, SEO, and SMM. So we're going to add all 3 images into our items. So how we're going to do this, after adding an H3, now we're going to add an image. And we also have to give a class for all images. We're going to say images on grid 4. Okay, and the source of this image is going to be images. And then this one is pay-per-click. So it's pay-per-click is this one right here. Okay, so we just added the first image. Now I am going to copy this and I'm going to add this image after the H3 for items 2 and item 3 for this grid container. Now, as you can see, we don't want all the images to be the same, pay-per-click. So I am going to have to look for the other images. Okay, it's SMM, and I think the next one is social media marketing. So let's do SMM. Here it is. And then the third image, I think it's SEO, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's see here. Pay-per-click, social media, and SEO. Okay, so those were the correct orders. Now let's go ahead and let's hit refresh. And boom, you see pay-per-click has an image. social media has an image and SEO now has an image. Of course, they haven't been styled yet, but we agree that all 3 images are in there. Now, the next thing we're going to have to do is add, according to the example site, we need to add some type of content in here. And also we have some emojis in here. Okay, some fire emojis and stuff like that. So here we go. The first thing we're going to do here is add it to the first item. Okay, so item number 1, then item number 2, and then finally to item number 3. How we're going to add each of these is going to be, they're going to be added with also a break, and I am going to insert them with a paragraph, and I'm going to give them all of them the same class so that we can style all 3 items or all 3 paragraphs of each item individually. Okay, so after the image for the first item, which is the pay-per-click, I am going to add a paragraph. I'm going to give this paragraph a class of grid 4p, which stands for grid 4 paragraphs. And inside of this paragraph, okay, I have already the entity for this. Okay, for this one, the entity is the following. You have to input ampersand. Let me input that in here. Ampersand, then hashtag. And then you want to input the number 9989. How do I know it's this one? Because there is a list, a reference list on W3 Schools, and I am going to give you the link on the description below so that you can go ahead and you can actually search for different types of emojis that you can add into your code, just so you know, okay? So, okay, so this is going to be the first one, and this one is called weekly optimizations. I'm just going to copy and paste all of these. Okay, perfect. So I am simply going to copy paste this entity, and I am going to input this on each line. Okay, there we go. And of course, I am going to give a break to each line, so that you can see how this will look like. Whoops. Okay, and then the final one. There we go. Okay, so now let's hit save. Going back to our test code, let's hit refresh. So after pay-per-click, okay, there you go. So now we have all 4 pieces of information have been added in there with this code. This is for item number 1. Now we're going to do the same for item 2 and item 3. Let's go ahead and let's do the second one. We're going to, I'm going to copy paste all of these, and then I'm just going to change the content, okay? So let's do that. Let's copy this, and after the image, let's paste this here, and let's also paste this here on the second and third item. Now what I want to do is change the wording. Okay, so let's copy this for Facebook marketing. Okay, this is item 2, and we're going to, for the social media, change this. Okay, so Facebook marketing. Now we have 2 fires here and then 2 check marks. So for the fire, let me see, for the fire, the entity is different. Let me show you which one is it. It is ampersand, and then you're going to type in the number, well, hashtag, and then the number 128293 space. There we go. Whoops. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to copy the same, because as you can see, it has another fire here. Okay, and then we're going to copy the same check marks that we had on the previous one in here. So we have one different entity now that you are getting to know. Okay, so that should do it. So let's hit save. And let's make sure, so it says Facebook marketing, TikTok marketing, content creating, competitor research. Okay, perfect. So that's how it goes. Now let's take a look into our website. Let's hit refresh. Social media, and boom. Whoops, we forgot to add the breaks. Okay, so let's make sure you don't forget about that, because if not, then you're going to be wondering, oh, what happened there? Why they don't look like a list? By the way, you can also have the capability of add them as an unlisted item, but I wanted to do it just this way, okay? Because for me, I mean, it's easy. It's also easy doing it the other way, but this is just my way, okay? Feel free to do it as you want. If you want to add it as an order or unordered list, you are more than welcome to do so, okay? So, okay, let's hit save and let's hit refresh. And boom, you see Facebook marketing, TikTok marketing, content creation, and competitor research. Perfect. Now we are missing the SEO information, which is different. And as you can see, it has this fire in the last one. Okay, so let's go back to our code. And I want to add these ones right here. Okay, let's make sure we indent them correctly. Okay, there. Okay, just let me just keep on deleting this. And let's make sure that we add the entity just to do this correctly. Okay, so 3 of them are check mark, and then the other one, it's this last one, it's a fire. Okay, fire, and then let's add 3 check marks right there. Okay, let's hit save. Going back to our code, refresh. Okay, 3 checks and a fire, and now let's add the breaks at the end. Okay, there you go. Now I hope you're following me doing this, because it's going to be a lot easier if you do it that way. Okay, so there we go. Now we have all of them properly written into our code. So I think this will be it with this section, the services section. So let's move on to the contact us section now. To do that, let's go back to our code, and let me make sure I delete any additional spaces that we have here. Okay, perfect. Hit save, making sure nothing changed in our code. Okay. Okay, so far we are moving good. Let's go on to the next grid, because this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is grid number 4. So what we're going to do now is move into grid number 5, okay? And let me just go ahead and do that. Oh, and by the way, let's make sure to add the note for this as well. So this, I'm going to copy all of this, and I'm just going to change. So this is the 5th grid container, and this is not call services. This is the contact container, because on the original website that we are duplicating, it's called contact. You see, it's this section right here. Okay, so in this section, we have one item, okay, and then we have a second item. The first item that you can see here is the map, and then this text under the map. And the second item is the contact us form. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's code along. Let's make sure that we are going to first add a division with an ID, okay, with an ID, and this is going to be called contact, so that when they click on the contact menu on that link, on that navbar link, it's they are taking into this section. Okay, now inside we're going to add one division with a class of grid container, and this is going to be grid container number 5. Yep, this is going to be grid container number 5. Now inside of this grid container, we're going to add a div, okay, And then this is going to be the first item. So let's give it the class of item 5-1. And we say we have 2 items. So the second item is going to be 5-2. So for the 5th grid container, first item, and then this is the second item. Okay, perfect. So now the first thing we want to do here is add this map. Now, if you do not know how to get this map, this is also an iframe, and it's very, very simple to get. All you have to do is go to Google Maps and then click the share button, and then you have to copy the code. I'm going to show you real quick. If I go ahead and I click, let me just go to Google Maps. Google Maps. Okay, and let's say I do 1, 2, 3, or you know what? Let's just copy paste the same location. Let's see here. This location right here. Okay, so if we go ahead and we copy this location, this is going to take you to the map. So we are going to click on the map. Okay, so here is the map. So you can go ahead and you can select any location. If you have a specific address, paste the address in there. We have several addresses here, like let's say this one, Googleplex Academy. If you click on this address, you will see the location item in there. And all you have to do, it's very simple to get this code. Just click where it says share and then embed map. You see? This is how it's going to look like. And then all you have to do is copy all the code, copy the HTML code, and then this code is going to be added into your HTML file. In this case, I'm going to add right now this code so that you can see how this will look like. Okay, so let me go ahead and actually do that right now. I already have this code for this iframe, okay? And in fact, I'm going to add 2 iframes. The first map is going to have a style for the desktop, so it's going to be a bigger one. And then the second map that I am going to add in here, this one right here. If you see, I have given the class of iframe map 2. This is not added by Google. I added this one. I just added a class to this map and a class to this one. Iframe map 1 and iframe map 2. This is because I configured each iframe differently so that one is a little bit small and the other one it's larger. So one is going to be available to be seen on a desktop, and then the other one is going to be able to be seen in mobile, and vice versa. One is going to be hidden when it's only on mobile, and the other one is going to be hidden when it's only on desktop. And you will see how that goes when we start styling our website right there. So we have added those 2 iframes. You can play around with the iframe. You can go ahead and you can change the width like I did, the height as well. So you can go ahead and actually adjust it as you better preferred or you better like into your code. Okay, so now we have the 2 iframes added in here. The next thing that the division number 1 has, let me go back to this website. Okay, after the map on the first item, we have hours of operations, and then we have all of this here. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's add them. We're still working on item number 1. So for the hours of operations, I'm going to use an H3, and I'll just say hours of operations. Okay, and I do remember this by heart because when I was coding this, I mean, I'm just going to put, I said, you know, something like 8 to 5, something like that, something that I can remember when I am teaching you guys how to do this. So after an H3, whoops, let me make sure I put this in lowercase. Okay, after the H3, we're going to add a paragraph, and in this paragraph, let's put the hours of operations are Monday through Fridays. Let's give it a line break, and then schedule is going to be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Typical working hours. I just did PST because I don't know. I just thought PST will be good. You can go ahead and change the time zone if you want. Then let's give it a break, want some space, and then I'm going to say that on weekends, we are closed. So don't bother this company on weekends. Okay, so on weekends, this company is closed. Let's see. In fact, let's just give one line here. Okay, so let's hit save. Let's go back to our code here and let's make sure this has been added after the SEO. So let's hit refresh. And boom, you see now you have one map, and then another map right here. So one it's bigger and then the other one it's a little bit tiny, and then you have here the hours of operations. Now right now it's fine if you can see two maps, because then we're going to style them so that one is hidden and the other one it's being reflected, depending on what type of device we're using or what is the screen width. Okay, so far we're moving good. So that's the first item. Now the second item under the contact us section is this form right here. I made it super simple. I didn't even add a phone number, but if you want to add a phone number to your form, go ahead and do it. You're more than welcome to play around with the form and style it and add more fields to it as you wish. Okay, I just added first, last name, just a country and a subject, and then I added this submit button. And just so you know, I mean, this is something very, very simple. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do it into our code in here. So going back to the index file, and by the way, this form, you can actually find it at W3 Schools under the templates, okay, for the forms. So you can go ahead and actually just copy paste the code there and use it at your best convenience. So for the form is on the item number 2 section, okay? This form is on item number 2. So what we're going to do right now is add this form. Now, this form, the first thing is going to have is a header, which is this one right here, contact us. And then we're going to wrap it into a container. So let's do that. Let's go back to our code. And let's go to item number 2, which is item for grid 5, number 2, right? Okay, so on this item, first thing we want to do is add another H3, and we're going to call it contact us. Contact us. Okay, let's hit save, refresh. Whoops, not this one, but the other one here. Okay, so there you go. You have the contact us, H3, and now let's play around with the form. So we're going to wrap up the form into a div. We're going to give it a class of container. Okay, and then we are going to type in a form action for this. Is going to be action underscore page.php. Now keep in mind that I do not have a PHP file, so I'm just adding this just because it's the normal thing to do when you have a form. You'll send it to a PHP server so that you can store all the data, right? But I mean, just so you know, I don't have that PHP server, so the submit button is not going to work until we teach you how to use PHP, SQL, and all of that, okay? So for now, just remember that this action is that when they click on the submit button, it'll go here, but right now it's not going to work. Again, we're just watching right now HTML and CSS. So, okay, perfect. So now it has an action. Let's start with the first label. So the label... Whoops, label. Let's do a label for first name, which is the typical. Is going to be, whoops, is going to be first name. Okay, and it already closed the label for me. Now, the input type for this label is going to be text, obviously, because when they write their names, it's going to be in text, not in numbers. So it's going to be text. We're going to give it an ID of first name. Then we're going to give it the name of first name, and the placeholder, whoops, and the placeholder is going to be your name, or whatever you want it to call it. I mean, that's up to you. If you don't want to write it your name, or you want to say to the people, hey, you know, write here your name, whatever, you know, and not just your name, you can change that. So let's hit save. Going back to our style, to our web page, let's hit refresh. Okay, boom. So here, there you go. We have the first field and it says your name in there. Okay, so now the next thing after writing here your name, we're going to add a label. In fact, you know what? Let's just copy paste all this, because this is going to be a bit repetitive for the last name. So let's copy this. Okay, I'm gonna paste it in here. And then instead of first name, here we're just going to change the letter to L for last name. And here, instead of first, we're going to change it to last. And of course, the text, okay, the ID is going to be last name, and the name, instead going to be first name, is going to be last name. And then the placeholder is going to be your last name. Okay, now let's hit save. Going back to our code, refresh, and boom, now we have your last name. There you go. Awesome. So far, we're moving good with the form. Okay, next thing you want to do is, let's add the country. So let's put a label for country. Okay, and we're going to call it country, of course. Then we are going to add in here a select ID of country. Name is going to equal to country. Again, we're just making sure this is this has been set up correctly. Okay. So okay, so the select, it's fine. So now inside we want to give a couple of options. Okay, so option, let's do option. The option value is going to be, let's say, Australia is going to be the first one. Let's just say Australia here. Then on option value, you know what? Let me just, because I'm not going to do this for each one of them. Let me just go ahead and copy this, paste this here. You can change this. I mean, it cannot be Australia, all of them. I'm just going to use it right now as Canada, and then here, let's give it as USA. Those are the ones we're going to be using. So Australia. Then we're going to say here Canada, and then we're going to say here USA. Those are going to be the three options they'll see when they click on that menu. Okay, that's what they are going to see in there. Okay, so let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh, and now there you go. So Australia, Canada, USA. You can feel free to change this. I think that on the website I set it up as USA, India, Nicaragua. that's my country, right? So yeah, I mean, go ahead and change the name of the countries if you want. You can go ahead and actually do that, no problem at all. Okay, so once you've added the selections for that label, for that field specifically, let's go ahead and add one more label. So the label for the subject, which we need a subject here, is going to be called subject. Of course, it's going to be called subject. Whoops, capital S. Let's make it capital S. And then it's going to have a text area. with an ID of subject, and the name is going to be subject as well. Whoops. So the name is going to be subject, and then we're going to add a placeholder in here that is going to tell them to write something. Hey guys, write something here if you don't know what to do with this box. Okay, and then we're going to give it a style right now to this, just so that you can see how this is going to actually look like. Okay, so just give me 1 second here. Let's see. I think the height I gave to the website, it was around 200 pixels, just so you know. Yeah, so let's just make it 200 pixels. And with that, we're finishing the text area. Okay, so far, I think we're almost done with this. I think we're just missing the submit button. Let's just make sure that this was inputted into our text. So let's hit refresh. And there you go. Okay. You can resize the text area. Okay, perfect. So going back here, make sure we gave a height of, oops. You know what? I forgot to add this on height. So let's hit save, refresh. Okay, now you see the height is 200 pixels. So far I hope everything here is making sense. Remember that if you have questions, you can always leave them in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to reply as soon as I can. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do, let me see here, the next thing I have to do on this code, okay, is the submit button. This submit button, we have to add it in there. Okay, so let's do that. So after the text area, we want to make sure that we input a type with the name of submit, and the value is going to be submit. Now make sure you do not confuse here, because if you do, then you're not going to see a button, and you probably will see something else. If you set it up as text, you're going to see a text, etc. So just make sure you do this one correctly. Okay, so with this we are finishing our section for the contact us. Okay, so let's hit refresh. Whoop, not here, but the other one. Let's see, refresh, and boom, here you see submit. Okay, so right now, as you can see, it's the input type of submit, it's in there. Okay, so let's make sure I change this, because that's the reason why it's not showing us a button. This is what I was telling you, just make sure you're very careful here. So let's hit save and let's hit refresh, and there you go. Now I have a button. If I click on it, nothing happened, because as I said, we do not have a PHP file, so this button is not going to work. Anyways, our tutorial is for CSS today, and obviously HTML. Okay, so now we have just finished this portion. So let's go ahead and let's do, I think that our next grid will be number 6, if I'm not mistaken. So let's go up here. So yeah, so let me just copy here all this information. Let me make sure that I add notes every time. There you go. So this is the 6th grid container. And this one is not contact. This grid container is going to be the footer. Now the footer, I mean, I didn't add much to it, but yeah, it's a little bit tricky. So we're going to get started with this just right now. So first thing first, we're going to add a division with an ID, and we're going to call this ID footer, because they click on footer. Well, actually there's no link for footer, but just so that we can remember, you know, there's a footer. Okay, and then we're going to add a div, and this div is going to be for our last grid container. So this is going to be grid container number 6. Okay, now on this grid container we have 1, 2, 3, 4 items. Okay, we have 4 items on this grid container. So let's make sure to add all 4 of them. Okay, so the first div, yeah, we're gonna give it a class. Yep, class of item number 1 for container number 6. Okay, I'm going to add 1, then we're gonna add the second one, third one, and I said it was 4 of them, right? So yeah, let's add 4. So this is going to be the second item, then this is going to be the third item, and this is going to be the fourth item. Okay, perfect. So now let's, whoops, not here, but, well, we're not going to be able to see anything. We're just right now into our code. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So yeah, so we need all 4 items in here. So let's start with the first item. Okay, the first item, it has these letters right here. I'm going to add an H4 for those because those are kind of big, and then an image. So let's go ahead and make sure we input that on the first item. This is going to be an H4, and here we're going to type we are, and I do remember this because I wrote it down. We are the best. Okay, and then and then field. You can type something else if you want to. I just didn't know what else to write, and I just put that in there. I thought it sounded good. Okay, so that's an H4. Now we're adding an image, and the image source is going to be obviously on my images folder, and I am pretty sure this is the Google partner image. Yep, this one right here. So this is the Google partner image, and right now I am going to style it because this is going to have a width of 200 pixels. Whoops. Width of 200 pixels. There you go. And oh yeah, we add some copyright here if I'm not mistaken. Let me see. Yeah, this thing right here. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy all of this, and I am going to paste it. But we're going to add that copyright symbol with an entity. Okay, so P, we're gonna make this style. We're gonna make this style has a font size. To some items I'll just simply use inline CSS, but to some others I'll use the external CSS, which is the other style sheet that we're going to be working with very, very soon. Okay, so there we go. Now this paragraph, I want it to end in here. Okay, so for the copyright symbol, we're going to use the entity, and is this one right here. Okay, numbers 169. Okay, there you go. Going back to the code, hit refresh, and boom, we're the best. Google Partner Copyright 2023, which is right here. Let's go to the next one. The next item, it has links and then the footer links. So let's add them on the item number 2. So on the item number 2, we want to say links. I'm not going to add an H1 or anything there. Let's just name them links just like that. Then a div with a class. Let's do footer links to this ones because I am pretty sure I'm going to have to style them later. So footer links. And let's add a line break between links and the footer links. And then I am going to add a class of links content container number 6. These are the links of container number 6, just FYI. And the href will be, well, the first one is our home section. So we are going to send them to home. Okay. Just like this, and then this is going to show us home. So let's hit save. Going back to our code here, let's hit refresh. See, we have the home section here. Perfect. So it's taking us to home. It's working perfectly. Okay, going back to our code, we're going to do the exact same thing for all the rest of the links. We're going to give them the class of links of container 6 because we're going to have to style all of them. So let's do 2, 3, and then 4. Now this one is going to be about, and the next one is going to be services. And the fourth one is going to be a contact. And we're going to also change the links where they will take you when you click on them. So this will be about. Remember that if you are, remember what you're using on your classes and your IDs, because it's not going to work. It's if it's lowercase or uppercase, is very case sensitive, just so you know. Okay, so let's save all of this and let's hit refresh. And boom, here we have. So if I click contact, it sends me to the contact form, hit about, takes me to the about section. Okay, so far is working fine. So on this section, we only had the links. Now let's go to location. That's the third item. And this location has a map and it has then an address right here. Okay, so let's add it and let's go to item number 3. So in item number 3, as you can see, we have another embedded code for Google. I already show you how to do that. So I'm just going to copy paste the code that I have for that iframe, which is for the footer, right? I have it just right here. Okay. And I even gave a line break, just so you know, at the end, because after the map, you will see this address. So just remember to add that line break. So let's copy this. Okay, and let's paste that on item 3 with the line break. In fact, if you want, you can put the line break here. Okay, so let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh, and the map should be there. There you go. There's a tiny map. The reason why I have a different iframe for each, remember, it's due to the size. Okay, the size for this one, it has a width of 200 and a height of 100. So that's why. Okay, perfect. So now we have given some space with the line break. Now I'm just going to copy the address that we see here. Okay, let's copy this. Okay. Let's make sure we put this in the right place. And let's not forget to add the break. Okay, there. And in fact, I want to have this in a paragraph, you know, all of this is going to be inside of a paragraph. Let's put all of these inside of a paragraph to make sure we can play around with it later. Okay, and this is called locations, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see. Yep, it's called locations. So no H1, no nothing, just type in locations. Feel free to do that. If you want to give it an H1 or an H2, H3, whatever you call it, feel free to do so. Okay, that's not a problem for me. But myself, I don't want to do it. I'm just going to set it up as locations. I already saved it. Going back here, refresh. And there you go. So you have locations, the map, and the address right at the bottom. And then the last part we have to add on HTML will be the contact information right here, which is this one. Okay, for the contact information, this is very simple, and this goes in item number 4. So let's go ahead and let's do that. First thing I want to say here is that this is going to be the contact info section. Then let's add a paragraph. I'm gonna give it a line break because I know it has a line break. And I'm going to use the 2 phones I use here. The first one is a regular phone and the second one is for a fax. Now I hope people can differentiate each and the other. Okay, so I know that the entity for the first phone, which is not a fax, is this one, and then the second one is this one right here. Okay, so the phone numbers are 305, blah, blah, blah. So let's type that in there. And then this one, oh, I put the same thing. And by the way, these phone numbers, I just made them up, okay? I don't even know if they work. Remember, this is just a test example for this website. So with this, let's make sure to add a line break on each. Well, not a line break, but just a break. Okay, so let's hit save. Going back to our code. You see this here? Refresh. Boom, contact info right here with a break. Perfect. So now we have our HTML file ready. We are ready to rumble, people. So let's see. Okay, so let's make sure that everything has been indented accordingly. We have given some notations here so that we know which section are we working with. So here is the nav bar, then we have the top banner, then we have a grid container for the home, then the third grid container is for the about section, then we have another one for services, a fifth one for contact, a sixth one for footer. Okay, now remember that the grid containers are not the sections because we have 7 sections in total, and I'll show you just right now. I mean, the first section is the nav bar. Okay, then the second section is the grid container, which is the top banner. That's the second section. Okay, the third one is the container home. That's the third one. Then this is the fourth. The fifth, services. The sixth is contact. And the seventh is the footer. So those are the 7 sections we're going to be working with in just a moment with CSS. So let's jump into our style sheet and let's start coding this. And let's start making it look as the example that I show you today, because I know that you are very familiar by now probably with HTML, and if not, you can go watch my course and get familiar with it. So now you're very eager to get started styling this website. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go to style. Let's go to style, the CSS section right here. So you can see right now everything looks ugly. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are going to adjust all of this right now. So the first thing we're going to do into our style sheet, let's go back here. We're going to select the entire document. And the first thing we want to say to this document is that we want the box sizing to be border box. Now, the reason why I set this up first is because we want to set this up because we want the dimensions of the elements, right? The dimensions of the elements will include the border and also the padding. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but you'll see in just a moment. But yeah, just remember, we are using border box because we want the dimensions of the elements to be included, or actually includes the border and the padding. Okay, so that's the first thing we want to do to our CSS style. Now, the next thing we want to do is set up a font. The font I want to use here, actually the font family that I want to use here is Arial. So that's the one we are going to be using. So I'm going to hit save, going back to our code, let's hit refresh. And boom, you see now the letters looks a little bit different, including the navigation links. Okay, so that's amazing. That's working really, really well so far. Okay, so now all the letters has changed and we have been setting the box sizing to border box. So let's go ahead and get started styling. First thing we're going to style is section 1 for the top nav bar. So let me just make a comment in here. Okay, we're going to say that we're going to style the top nav bar. Yep, that's what we're going to do right now. Oops. Okay, there we go. Okay, so to style the top nav bar, we are going to be using the class top nav. Okay, so we're going to say top nav, and we want this to have a width of 100% first and foremost. Okay, let's hit save. Going back to our code, refresh. Right now, you cannot see anything because, well, obviously, the width and everything will be applied as soon as we keep on adding some more properties. So I'm just going to add the entire properties, and then you'll see how this is going to change. So now the next thing we want to do is we are going to put the overflow as hidden. We are going to set this up. Let's hit refresh. Okay. Now the next one is going to be the background color. We're going to make the background color on RGB because I already have the color palettes that I use for this. It's going to be 49, then green, 151. The reason why I'm giving these colors is because I want it to match with the logo that I'm using, which, by the way, I just picked the Microsoft logo. You can change that logo. I just wanted to pick a random picture, okay? And I just thought that was okay. Alrighty. So 151, and then the other one, it's 243, which is going to give me the blue colors. So let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. So you see, now it has that background color. Okay, the next thing I want to do is apply a border style. Let's apply a border style, and this is going to be solid. Okay, and the border color, we want to make it white. Let's do it white smoke. And then now the border width, let's add a border width. We're going to make it 0 pixels to all the areas except for the bottom. We want to give it 4 pixels to the bottom, okay? So 0, 0, 4 pixels to the bottom, and then 0. Let's hit save. Back to our code, refresh. You see how now it's kind of adding that white smoke border at the bottom? That's what it's going to separate our nav bar from the top banner with the logo and this text right here. Okay, so there you go. Now the next thing we want to do here is add some padding. Let's add some padding to the left. Okay, and this is going to be 33% of the width of the padding. I'm sorry. Okay, so 33% of the screen. So let's go ahead and let's hit refresh, and boom, you see now this has been moved. If you want to give it more padding, feel free to do so. In fact, I can go ahead and actually do this to 40% if you want, and put it a little bit more to the center. So play around with the padding, and you can go ahead and actually set it up where you want it to be. Okay, so we are done setting up for now the style to the top nav. Okay, now this is the division that holds all the nav links together. Now what we are going to do is style all the links inside of this division. Okay, all the links, that's what we want to style now. So to do that, we are going to say to our style, now I want to style, let's say to the top nav, A for all the links, okay? Because if you can see here, this is a link A. So to all the links called A, right? I want to give a different style. So this is where the magic is going to begin. First thing we want to do is make all of them to float to the left. Okay? So hit save, go back here, hit refresh. And you see how now all of them are close to each other's? Okay, so that's what happens when we make them float to the left. Now, as soon as you go ahead and set this up to the left, the next thing you are going to do, okay, the next thing you're going to do is make sure to set the display to block, okay? Display block. Now I'm going to hit refresh. Nothing happens just yet because everything will start changing as soon as we put everything together, okay? So this display block, just make sure to do that. Then the color for this is going to be white, plain and simple. White. Then the next thing you want to do is add some padding to your nav bar links. Oops, hold on. I added some brackets that I don't want in there. Okay, so the padding, we're gonna add 14 pixels and 16 pixels, which is the usual. So hit save, hit refresh, and you see how now everything is changing. Okay, so we have been giving a padding. Now text decoration, we want to remove that, okay? Okay, here on top. Okay, so text decoration, we want to set this up as none. We don't want any text decoration. We don't want them to be underlined. So let's hit refresh, and boom, there's no text decoration now. Now the next thing we want to do is set up a font size for this. And I want this to be 20 pixels. Let's set it up as 20 pixels, hit refresh. Now you see it looks bigger. The next thing you want to do to this is set up a font weight, okay, to make it look thicker. And I'm going to set this up as bolder, okay? We want to make it bolder. Hit save, and now let's hit refresh, and boom, you see now it's bolder. So I think that should work to start with for the nav bar, okay? We want to do something else. You remember that when you go to this website, if I hover over the nav bar, it gives this cool, this is not a transition and nor an animation, but you see how it's cool, it changes the color. So we're going to apply something different when we hover over the nav links. Okay, so let me go back to the code, and I'm going to add that in here. Was forgetting about that. Okay, so we're going to say top nav to a links when the state is hover. We want to change the background color, and I'm going to make it RGB. And this RGB, I had it already as well. It's 35, 104, 165. It's similar to the first color that we have as background, but this one is a little bit darker so that you can see the difference when we hover over them. And then the color is going to be white, but white smoke. Okay, so let's hit save. Going back to the page, let's hit refresh. And whoops, I think we are not giving the correct style to this. So let me just change something here. So this is going to be RGB. Oh, okay. Put a space there. Make sure you don't leave any spaces. Okay, so now I save that. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. And now, boom, you see? Now the background color changes when we hover over them. So that's perfect. I think we are done with the nav bar. Section number 1, checked. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is go ahead and style. And remember, this is for desktop view. We're doing this for desktop view. We're going to do later the one for the cell phone or tablets. Okay, so now we want to make this looks like this. So right now it's ugly, it looks like this. So let's go ahead and style the second section, which is the top banner. Okay, everybody, so now let's go to the top banner. It's going to be this section right here. Remember I told you I was going to style something here. Okay, what I am going to style is this H1. I just want to give it a style color of white. Okay, let me just make it white. Whoops. That one, white. Okay, so I'm going to set this one up as white with inline CSS. That's the first thing we want to do to our HTML change. Now let's go back to the style sheet, and let's see. To this style sheet, we are going to do now. So this is section 1, top nav bar. So let's go for section 2, the top banner. That's what I'm gonna call it. Okay, top banner. So let's style the top banner. So the first thing we want to do is grab the first grid container that we added here. Remember, in our index.html, we have this grid container, and then we have item 1.1 and item 1.2 in there. We have an image with logo.png, and then we have an h1, which we already give it an inline style of white. So let's go back to style in here, and we're going to call grid container 1. Okay, so to this grid container, first thing, we're going to set up the display as grid. Now, that was our previous chapter on CSS. I hope you remember and that you have been practicing. Okay, so the display is going to be grid. We're going to align all the content. We're going to align this to the top. The grid template columns. I know we only have 2 items, but check out. Here on the columns, I want to add 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, okay? And you will see why in just a moment. 5 columns here. Then afterwards, we want to input a gap for each column of 10 pixels. Just make it 10 pixels. We want to assign a background color, and the background color I want to give here is going to be the same one of the top nav bar. So this one right here. Simply going to copy paste this here, and we're going to do this a lot, by the way, so just get used to it for now. So the background color is going to be this one right here, and then we want to make sure that we add some padding as well. Let's add some padding. Okay, the padding, let's just make it 1 pixel, and I also want to add a margin for 1 pixel as well. Okay, so if I hit save, going back to our code, hit refresh, you see, boom. Now this is looking a little bit better, but we still have to fix a couple of things. This doesn't look nice like the example right here. So we want to change that. We want to make sure we change that. Going back here to the grid container, for the top banner, which is grid container 1, we want to style the items for this grid container, okay? We want to style the grid container item. So to do this, we're going to say grid container 1 for everything that is inside of this div container. So for all the items, in other words, we want to give them a specific style. We want to align the text. We're going to align the text to the center. Okay, the next thing we also want to do is add some padding of 20 pixels and top and bottom, 20 pixels top and bottom, and 0 pixels from left to right. We don't want padding there. And the font size, we want to make it big. We want to make it 30 pixels big. So let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit boom, refresh. You see how now this has changed? Now another thing I want to do, because right now I have auto, and we only have pretty much 2 items in here, but I set them up as 5 because I want to make sure that for whatsoever reason, if we're shrinking the window or whatever, I want to make sure that item 2 in this grid container, so for item and grid container 1, number 2, understands that he is going to cover the grid columns from the 2nd line all the way to the 6th line. What this means is that if you have 5 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then you start counting the lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if you have 5 columns. So this one is going to expand from line 2 to all the way to line 6 to make sure that it goes all the way from here to all the way to the 6th line. Okay, I hope that makes sense, but if not, just you can go back to my grid video tutorial and that should help you. Or if not, just leave the questions and I'll reply as soon as I can. So 2 to 6, we want to make sure that it knows that this item number 2 is going to expand all the way to 6. So let's go back to our code in here. Let's see, this is index.html. Okay, I think this is not the one. Okay, this is the one. that we haven't styled. Okay, so let's hit refresh and boom. So now you see how it arranged a little bit because we are applying all the style in here, and we just arrange the items from 2 to 6. Okay, so that's all we have to do for the first grid container, which is the top banner. Now it's aligned correctly. Okay, so let's keep on moving to the second grid container, which is our home section. Okay, this one right here, which right now it looks like this. Okay, so and remember, it's not only this, but it's also the iframe that we have in there. So let's go ahead and let's style the next grid container here. But first, let me make sure that we go back to our HTML, okay? Just to make sure and see that there's nothing missing there. Maybe some inline style that we want to give or something, okay? So I'm going to go back to our HTML code here. Let's go to the top banner. Okay, we already did that one. And let's go to the second grid container. Okay, I think it looks fine. I don't think it needs any inline style here. Okay, so we are simply going to go ahead and style it right now. So here, this is the third section of our document. So we're going to be styling, instead of the top banner, this is going to be the home. Okay, section number 3, home. To style home, we are going to get, the first thing we're going to get is the head home, which is the header. Remember, we did not input that on the grid container. Here is the grid container. So this is the container. It only has one item. But the home, it's outside of that container. So we are going to style this first. It has a class of head home. So going back here, let's say head home. Head home, is that it? Head home, yeah, head home with capital H. Let me not forget about that, because if not, this is not gonna work. Head home. Okay, so to head home, we want to give some style. And the only thing I'm gonna do really with the head home is align the text. I could have even do this as inline style, but well, let's just do it here. I want to align this to the center. Okay, so let's hit save. Going back here, now this is going to align to the center. Let's hit refresh. Whoops, it's header home, not head home. Okay, so make sure that you're typing everything correctly, because then if not, the style will not apply. So let's hit save. Going back to our code, refresh, and boom, now this has been aligned to the center. Okay, now as you can see, the video, it's also aligned to the center. So we're going to do this by styling the grid container number 2. Okay, so let's go back to our code, and we're going to say grid container 2. Let me give you some style, and I'm going to set up the display as grid first. We're going to be doing this a lot, so you're going to be getting very familiar with grids. We're going to align the content also to the top. Okay, the next thing we want to do is set up some columns, grid template columns. We're going to set this up as auto, because it's only going to be one column, which is going to be for the iframe. Okay, the YouTube iframe. Then we're going to set up a gap, if there were any, of 10 pixels. And we're going to set up the background color as white, not white smoke, just white. Let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. And right now you cannot see the change, because we still have to set up some style to the items inside of this grid. So for all grid container items in grid container 2, everything that is inside of this grid, all the divs, meaning all the items inside of this div, we want to style them. We want to make sure that we text align them to the center. Okay, we want to text align them to the center, and we are going to give some padding. And padding is going to be given some space from top and bottom. Okay, padding. Okay, this padding, we want to set them up 20 pixels up and down. That's the space that you're going to see. And 0 left to right, because We don't really need that. Okay. So now I'm going to hit save. As you can see, this is moved to the left and it doesn't have any space from the image or the upper section. So let's hit refresh. And boom, now it has a little bit of padding and it has been aligned to the center. So that's it for section number 3. Now we're going to be moving to section number 4, which is the about section. You see how big this image is, and then we have this here looking ugly. Well, we're going to set this up nice and smooth. So let's do it. Let's do it. Let's go back to our index.html file first. Okay. And the first thing we want to do here in this specific file is check and see if we don't have to, I don't know, maybe style something here in inline, because there are a couple of things that we can style inline. Let me do the paragraph. The paragraph right now, it's the color, as you can see, of this paragraph is gray. Well, we want it, well, I'm sorry, it's not gray, it's black. We want it to be gray. So we're going to give it some style to it, okay? The style is going to be a color. And this color is going to be gray. Let's just call it gray. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so let's hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. And let's see. Okay, so this has changed. You see? But you know what? I'm also going to style this in gray. So we might want to give it a specific gray to this. So I'm going to set out an RGB. An RGB, and it's going to be 198. You can change this color if you want. I'm just going to set it up like this because I know this color is going to work perfectly when we give this a color of gray. So let's hit refresh. And right now we're going to hit refresh here. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it's looking better. Okay, now we have assigned an inline style. Let me see what else do we have to do here in terms of inline coding. I think that'll be it for inline style. So let's go back to our style sheet and let's make sure that we are going to add a note here. Okay, and this note is going to say that we are going to be styling. Let's do this. We're going to style the about section. We're going to style the about section. This is what we are going to do. Okay, so to start styling the about section, we're going to simply use the grid container. And this is grid container number 3. Okay. And to grid container number 3, again, we want to set the display to, you already know it, grid. Okay, and then we're going to align all the content to the top. I could have done this in just one line of code to different grid containers, but I just want you to see how everything works and how each item is being aligned. Because if you're a beginner, it's easier for you to see how this works if I'm doing this one by one, rather than me just having one simply class and then just doing everything from the get-go. Plus, this gives me more flexibility to style each grid container differently. So I hope this makes sense to you. Anyways. So we're going to align this to the top. Now we're going to set up a grid template column. Okay, we're going to set up the grid template columns to 60%, the first one, and the second one is going to be automatic. Why? Because the image has to be a little bit bigger than the actual text. So that's why 60% of the width template column is going to be taken by the image. Okay, now the gap between each is going to be 10 pixels, and the background color for this is going to be white, plain white. Okay, not white smoke, just white. And then as soon as I do this, I'm going to hit save, going back to my code here. Let's hit refresh. And boom, now you see this thing right here? it's in top of the image now. We want to change that. We want to make sure that everything has been aligned correctly. So to do that, we have to style the items inside of this grid container. So we're going to say to grid container 3 items, all the divisions in there. We want to make sure that the text is aligned to the center. And let's give also a padding to the top and bottom. The padding is going to be 20 pixels and 0 pixels. And the font size for this one, we want it to be big. So we're going to set it up as 30 pixels. Okay, so let's hit save. Back to our code, refresh, and boom, now it's bigger, you see? But still, this image, it's not aligned properly. So we are going to align the image itself. So for this, to the image, if you go back to your index, we have given a class of people, okay? So we're going to say to people, we want to give a specific style. We want the height of this people image to be 100% of the container, okay? And then the width, we also want it to be 100%. Hope that makes sense. So let's hit save, and now let's hit refresh here. And boom, you see, now the image has been aligned to the entire container 100% on height and width. Remember that for the first column, we give it a width of 60%. It's using 60% of the columns, and the other one, it's automatic. It's using the remainder. You see, remember? And now 100%. So that has aligned the image and also the text. But one thing I can see here is that this text in particular, it's still black. And we don't want that, because on the image right here, hold on, let me see if I can, yeah, this one right here. You see, this one, it's gray. So we want this to be gray as well. So let me make sure that I do some adjustments here for this. And I'm going to style the head 3, because this is the head 3. That's the name of the style. So we already styled the people. Now we're going to style the head 3. Okay, so head 3. Whoops. It's called the class head 3, which is header number 3 for grid number 3. I think this is grid number 3, right? Yeah, the about section. Okay. So for head 3, we want to make sure that the color of the text is gray. And the padding to the top, let me show you what will happen if I just leave it gray right now. Okay, so see, there's no padding on the top, and this looks very far away. Actually here, I'm sorry, here. If I hit refresh, let me see. No, this is not the one. Having 2 of these opens makes me go confused. Okay, so in our services, so this is the one we're working. Right now, there's no padding on top. If we go to the example one, we have a padding here on top. So let's make sure that we add a padding here, okay? So the padding for this is going to be 50%, 15%. Okay, so let's save it. Going back to here, which is the website we're working with, let's hit refresh. And boom, now it has a padding. Okay, now it has a padding. Perfect. So far, everything is looking as the example website so far in here. Okay, one thing I do want to check out here. Let me see. The font size is 30 pixels, so I think that's fine. I think we're moving okay here. So let's go to the next one. Now we're going to grid container number 4, which is services. Okay, we're going to start talking about services and how to style the services section. Let me go here. I'm going to scroll a little bit. I'm going to scroll a little bit down, and we're going to take a look at the services section here. First thing we're going to do is style. Well, we're going to style everything in here. But in order to do this first, let's go back to our style section. In fact, well, let's search first on HTML and see if we don't have to give any type of inline style to this section for services. I don't think we have to do any type of style, inline style to this. In fact, let's see. Let me just double check something. Social media SEO. No, we are not going to give any type of inline style to this. We're going to style along on the external CSS sheet for the services area. Okay, so let's move to the services area right now in here. Let's go to style, and I'm going to copy here this section. This is going to be the 4th section we're styling, and this is the services section. Services. Okay, now let's hit save. Let's go back to, well, let's see if this is the 4th section. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, this is the 5th section. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah, so this is the 5th section, just so you know. 5th, 6th, and then 7 is the footer. So we're in the 5th section right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's give it a style. Let's style all services. So the first thing we're going to do is open our grid container, which is number 4. And we're going to set the display to grid. We are going to align the content to the top. Then the grid template columns, are going to be 3, and we're going to set up 32.8% because I already test this, and this is the percentage that will work between each column so that all 3 of them will look nice and smooth. So each column will be of 32.8%, okay, the size of them. Now the gap between each of them will be 10 pixels. That is going to be left like that, and the background color is going to be white, plain white, not white smoke. Okay, now I'm going to hit save. Let's go back to our working code here. Let's hit refresh, and boom, you see all of them right now have been aligned to 32.8% each column, but our services and all the rest looks wrong. So let's keep on styling. Now what we're going to do is that all grid container for divs, we want them to have a text aligned to the center, and we're going to have a padding top and bottom of 20 pixels and 0 left to right, and the font size of this, we also want it to be 30 pixels. So let's hit save, refresh. Okay, so now it looks a little bit better, but we still can play around with this. Now remember that we did the top div services, and we actually gave it a class of top div services. This is to our services. This is the banner that we have here of our services. So we're going to style that section right now. It's called top div services, the class. Okay, so let's do that. So let's do the top div services. Okay, and to this top, we want to add a background color. I have a background color specific for this one. It's 2196F3. Okay, yeah, that should be the one. And the height of this is going to be 50 pixels. So to this one in particular, this is how this is going to be styled, okay? To the top div services. Let's hit save. Now let's hit refresh, and boom. Okay, it's looking better. Perfect. So it's looking better. So that's the top services. Now we're going to style the H1 for this. In this one, it had a class of services H1. If I'm not mistaken, that's how I named it. So going back to our index file, services 1. You see? Services. Well, I actually wrote it down at services H1 here. Yeah, let's just include the H in there. Okay, so services H1. We want the services H1 to have a margin actually left of 40%. And the color, we want it to be white. So this is going to move our services and it's going to make it white, the letters. Okay, so let's hit refresh and boom, our services has been now aligned to the center because we gave a margin of 40%. So perfect. Now we have the services H1 aligned properly. Okay, so now we are going to style the pay-per-click, social media, and SEO headers that we have right here. Okay, so let's go back here. And to all those, they are called, let's see, they are called H3 Grid 4. That's the class, H3 Grid 4. So let's copy this. Let's call it Grid 4. Okay, so for the H3 Grid 4, the only thing we want to do, it's plain, it's simple. We want to add a color to it and we want to make them gray. That's it. So let's save it, refresh, and boom, now they look gray. Next thing we want to style is the images. Now for this, I remember that they are called images grid 4. Images of grid 4. And the only thing we want to do is add a width of 90% into their container and a height of 50% in their container. So this is going to make all the images go into the same size, okay? And is images grid the class? I know that by heart because in here it says, there you go, images grid 4. Okay, perfect. So now let's hit refresh and boom, you see now all images are properly centered on each grid. Now the last thing we want to do is change this paragraphs right here. And right now they don't look that order, and on the other website, and this one, they do look aligned, all of them. Okay, so we're going to align all these. And to align all these, we have here another class for all their paragraphs. And this should be called Grid 4P. That's how we name this class. You go to the index file, to all paragraphs, they will have a class of Grid 4P. Okay, so let's go back to style. To Grid 4P, we're going to give a color, and the color we want it to be gray because right now it's black, and we want it to be aligned with the rest of the theme of this website. So color will be gray, then we're going to text align to the left to make them all look order, and then we're gonna give a little bit of padding because if I only leave it like this right now and I hit refresh, they will move all the way to the left. But I want to give some padding to this. Okay, so padding up to the left of 100 pixels for each. So if I hit save, refresh, you see it's moved a little bit more to the center rather than going all the way to the left. So for the services section, which is our 5th section, we're done. That's all we had to do in here, at least for all desktop items. Okay, now we're going to style the contact us section, which is the 6th section and the 5th grid. So let's do that. Okay, let me just make sure that I add a text here saying we're going to style the contact section. Okay, to style the contact section, let me just go back to index here, that HTML, and scroll a little bit down. We're going to style this in 2 parts. The first part is going to style probably the paragraph and the Google Maps, right? Want to display them or hide one of the 2 maps, and then we're going to do the second part, which is going to be styling the form that we have in here. Now let's see. to align this, see, some of the works for a web developer is to think how you're going to do things, right? Because if not, you cannot simply just go ahead and go with the flow, right? I mean, you have to think how everything has to be organized. So I hope that you also do that. A lot of thinking, a lot of planning, so that everything can be organized properly. Now, what we're going to do right now, since to this one we already gave the inline style. Remember, we gave an inline style in here already. I don't have to give any more inline style. That's why I was checking the HTML code here. We're going to jump right into it, and let's start coding on style.css on this file right here. Okay, so right now, as you can see, we have two maps. This is one map, and this is another map. Okay, so we have one map and two maps. So we want to hide one of them. But well, first and foremost, let's give some style to the grid container, and this one is going to be number 5. Grid container number 5 is going to first make the display grid. Then we're going to align the content to the top. After this has been aligned to the top, we're going to create a grid template columns. The template columns in this one are going to be 45% each. That's going to be the size for each. And the gap between each one of them is going to be only 9%. Okay, 9%. And obviously the background color, it has to be white. Okay, perfect. So now this has been set. Let's go back to our code and let's hit refresh. Boom, you see now you have two columns. This one with two maps, a little map and a big map, and then the other one with the form. It has been separated into two columns here. Now, let's go ahead and style the grid items. So for grid container 5, to all the divs in here, we want to give a different style, okay? So we want to make sure that the text is aligned to the center. The padding, top and bottom, is about 20 pixels, and the other one is 0 from left to right. And the font size, I want it to be also 30 pixels. So let's save this, hit refresh, and let's scroll a little bit down, and boom, you see now everything, it's 30 pixels. Okay, nice and smooth. And this one is also 30 pixels. So I think that for this items in particular, the first item, the first grid item, we are almost done. We only have to hide this map, and then we're going to start styling the form. So what I want to do now is to style it's hide this map. So for this, it's very simple. We gave a class to each iframe. We set up iframe map 1 and iframe map 2. Those are the two classes. So what I'm going to do is use iframe map 2, which is the tiny one that we're going to use for mobile. We're going to display none. Okay, so this is going to hide it. This is going to hide this little map. The bigger one will remain. So let's hit refresh. Scroll down, and boom, you see now the second map has been displayed as none, meaning that it's hidden. Okay, so you cannot see it. It's there, but you cannot see it. You can only see the big one. So for this column, I think we're done. There's really nothing else that we have to do. Now what we're going to do here, it's start styling the form. The form, it's important. So let's go ahead and style the form. The form classes and everything, it's very easy because we do remember the regular names that we give, like L name, which stands for last name, or F name, which stands for first name. Okay, so let me just make a notation here. I'm just going to type in a note that here we are going to style the form. Okay. Yep, there we go. Okay, so first thing we want to do here, it's called all inputs. All inputs. Whoops. All inputs, and we're going to use this brackets because remember the selectors, you can go back to our chapters in our selectors. You can also use brackets to select different type of items inside of, or elements inside of your HTML file. So the type of the input is going to equal to text. So to all the inputs with style of text, and whoops, the select text area will have the following style. Okay, so we want to make the width be 100% of their of the item itself. Then the padding we want to give to this is going to be 12 pixels. Then we're going to use a border, and it's going to have 1 pixel solid. We're going to make it, we're going to assign a color that we have right now here. So it's, I think this is the one. Yeah, it's kind of like a gray, but not that gray. Okay, so then we have a border radius. And this is going to be 4 pixels because it's kind of rounded, but not that rounded either. Okay. Then the box sizing, obviously, we're going to set this up as border box again. Then we're going to have a margin to the top. And the margin to the top is going to be 6 pixels. Then we're going to have a margin also to the bottom. And this is going to be 16 pixels. And we're going to make it resize. Vertical. Okay, that's how we want it to be resized. Now if I hit save, see how this form is going to change now. Let's hit refresh. See, now we have to all the text areas, we have a little bit of change in there. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is change the input for hold on, let me give me 1 second, because this has to change also for text area. So let's hit refresh. Okay, there you go. Okay, so now it did change for the text area. So I was just having 1 space here. Just make sure there's no spaces in there. Okay, so now we're going to use the input, and we are going to make the input to the type of whoops. No, we don't want this. Give me 1 second. Okay, so the input for type equals to submit. So everything that equals to submit, we're going to style it differently. The background color we're going to give them is 04AA6D, which is kind of green. Then we're going to have a color which is going to be white for the text. Then the padding for it is going to be 12 pixels and 20 pixels. Then it's going to have a border, and the border will be none because we don't want a border for this. And the border radius, it's going to be 4 pixels. And then when you use a cursor, we want to make it go pointer. Okay, so let's hit save. Now let's hit refresh and take a look at the submit button right now. Now I'm going to hit refresh, and now the submit button, you see it changes to a pointer when we hover over it. Okay, so far we are moving good. Now we are going to change right now, and in fact, give me 1 second. Yeah, we're gonna change right now the let's change the submit when it hovers. Okay, so the input, again, it's gonna be the type of type. We're gonna set it up as submit. Okay, now when this submit is on the state of hover, then we want the background color to change to and I'm going to apply 45A049. Okay, let's hit save. Now let's hit refresh here. Now if I hover over it, it's a darker green. Okay, perfect. So now let's just add the color to the container. To the container of this form, we want to apply some style, and we want to give a border radius of 5 pixels and a background color. And now this one, it is going to be an F2, which is going to be a very light gray, and the padding for this is going to be 20 pixels. So now let's hit save, back to our code, refresh, and boom, you see, now everything, it's working beautiful. So we are only missing one last section, which is the 7th section for this tutorial today, and that is the footer section. Okay, so let's start coding it. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to set this up at the bottom. Just remember that this is to style the footer. Okay. Now, to style the footer, you will see it's not that hard. It's not that complex. All you have to do is make sure that you pay attention to what exactly is it that you are styling. So I'm going to start by styling the grid container, which is going to be number 6 for the footer. Let me just scroll a little bit down. Yeah, this is the last one. So this is the footer section. Let me just review the HTML code a little bit, because we need to make sure that if we are going to give some inline style, you know, we do it right now. I think that the only inline style we had in here, it was for this. Then I don't think we need any other style, inline style for this. Yes, I think we're good. Okay, so let's start styling here. This is grid container indeed number 6. Okay, so let's do that. The first thing is the grid container. So let's say grid container 6. Okay, you might be familiar with this already. So display grid. Then the next thing we're going to do is align the content to the top. Then afterwards, we're going to have a grid template columns. This one, since there are 4 columns in the last section, which is the footer, we're going to set them up as 25% each, so they are all the same, okay, with the same size. So 25% to all 4 columns. Then we're going to apply the same gap of 10 pixels to all of them. Then we want a background color to be the well, let's use the F3, this one right here, the blue one, and the color of the text for this section is going to be white, not white smoke, just white. Okay, so let's hit save to the footer section. Let's see how it's going to change now. Refresh, and boom. Okay, so everything has changed. Now we just have to order everything in order to make sure it falls into place. So let's start with the grid item. So for grid container 6, all the items inside, okay, we're going to give it a different style. First of all, we're going to make sure that the text aligned to the center. Then the padding top bottom, as you may know already, is going to be 20 pixels and 0 left to right. And the font size. Now this font size, we don't want it to be 30 pixels. We want to set it up as 20 pixels this time. Okay, 20 pixels, the font size. And I'll say that should be enough. So let's hit save. And let's go back to our code, refresh. Boom. Okay, so now everything is white. Now the next thing we want to do is style the links. The links of the container number 6. Why am I using this? Because the links of container number 6, they have a class of footer links for the overall, and then links container number 6 for each one of them individually. Okay, so that's why. So the links in container number 6, we want to Number one, links on container number 6. So number one, we want to set the display as block. Okay, and number 2, we want to make the text aligned to the left. Now I'm going to hit save, hit refresh, and boom. See, now they changed. Now the other thing we want to do is that to the footer links, which is the entire div, as you can see here, is the entire div, footer links, all this. So to the footer links, I want to apply a padding from the left to 130 pixels so that this can move here. Let's hit refresh, go all the way down, and boom, see, that has been arranged to almost the center. And then the last thing I have to apply style here is to the footer links, but the link itself, right? We're going to change its color. And first we're going to remove the text decoration. We're going to set it up to none. And then the color for it is going to be white. Let's hit save, and now let's hit refresh. And boom, now all of them are white. Now let's make the comparison with the site that we started by creating, the example. This is the example. Okay, now if I hit refresh on the example, as you can see, the video starts to play automatically and all the rest of the items are positioned correctly. Now let's make sure and see that if in our in the site that we're working right now, in the copy that we're making of that one, if everything is working fine. So it seems like it is. Now let's hit refresh and see if this autoplays. Okay, so the video is not autoplaying. Let's go back to the code for HTML here. And let me see something. Okay. I think we forgot to add here. Okay, so you see, after the number 4, you need to make sure that you set it up as autoplay. Now, in my notepad, I found this code. And this is for you to make any YouTube video autoplay on Google Chrome. Remember, this is for Google Chrome. I'm not sure about the other web browsers, but this one works perfectly with Google Chrome, which is the one that most people uses nowadays. If it's Safari or some other explorers, it might work, but if it doesn't, you can go ahead and actually Google it up and it'll give you, you know, all the answers. So this one works for Google Chrome. So I'm going to copy this code, which is a question mark, autoplay equals to 1, and then mute to 1, right? To make it autoplay. So I'm going to copy this right after on the iframe, right after the source, the last letter, and before it finishes the quote. Okay, just make sure to be very careful there. I'm going to paste that in there. Let's hit save. Now going back to our website, let's hit refresh again, and let's make sure that this time it plays. Okay, perfect. So now it's autoplaying. Now, we'll have already finished styling the entire website. I know this has been a very long video, but you know, it takes a lot to style a website. And I just wanted to be very specific in the things that I was doing so that you can go ahead and just duplicate everything and maybe have your questions answered by me doing this tutorial long. However, if it's not, if the questions are not answered and you still have doubts, feel free to leave me your questions in the comment section below and I'll make sure to reply as soon as I can, okay? So far it's going good. Now there's one more thing that we haven't done yet and we have to do it. And is that when we resize the window, take a look and see how this is going right now. If I resize it, it looks ugly. It looks ugly. I mean, everything doesn't fall into part. So we have to change that and make sure that it doesn't look like this, because right now if we resize it, it looks bad. Now the other one on the other end, if I resize this one, let me just go ahead and do it right now. Everything on this one looks pretty decent. I'm not gonna say that it looks awesome because I know I can make it better, but it looks pretty decent, you know, like you can actually read the letters. It has this cool effect when you hover over the menu bar, and you know, everything, it's being organized in a proper way for a cell phone or a tablet, right? Which are, you know, smaller screens, rather than this one right now that it looks hideous. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. And we're going to do that with media queries. So in order to do this with media queries, just follow me along, and I am going to explain you exactly what is it that we're going to change when we have certain breakpoints, okay? And we're going to be looking at this right when we are making the changes in here, because right now I am going to make all the changes like this example site, okay? So I'm going to close the example site, and we are only going to work right now with the one that we are coding. So let's go back to style. And in here, well, the first thing that you want to do to start changing the style and everything, it's add a media screen rule, right? So we're going to hit add media, and then use screen, which is the most typical that you'll see. Most front end developers use. This is the one that is going to allow us to add breakpoints. So just follow along, okay? So add media screen, and we're going to set up here if the max width, okay, equals to 769 pixels or less, then this is gonna happen. And I just added this in here because you want to make sure that you are styling everything properly in here. So I set it up at 769 pixels, just thinking of if the view is in a tablet or anything smaller, then this view is going to change, right? But if you want to do it specifically by phones and not have the breakpoint applied into a tablet, then you can change this and adjust it to the right phone size, okay? So you can play around here with the max width and whatever you want it to be. So first we want to make sure that this works. So I'm going to apply to the body section, a background color of black, just to make sure that this works. So the background color, as soon as I hit refresh, right now it should change to black. Okay, perfect. So you see it changed to black. If I maximize it, it's white. If I minimize it or it goes to a breakpoint, like here, the breakpoint is exactly there, you see? So if the screen is this size or smaller, then the background color is black. But I am not going to set up a background color of black, right? So I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to start applying the actual style so that you can actually see how to arrange everything properly. So okay, the first thing we are going to do is play with the top nav bar. So the top nav bar right now, we want the padding of the nav bar to go to the left 0 pixels. Why? Because check out what this is going to do. Let's hit refresh, and boom, you see now everything is organized at the left side. In the top of our code in here, you see the padding to the left is 40%, so it moves all the way to the right. So here we remove the padding that we had assigned on the top to the left, and now as you can see, all the items have been rearranged to the left side. So that's the first thing we are doing on mobile. Now the next thing we want to do is change the top nav links. Okay, so to all the links, we are going to make them float. The float is going to be none. We're going to text align them, justify, and then we're going to use a padding top, bottom, left, right to 20 pixels each. So 20 pixels and 20 pixels instead of 14 and 16 that we did on top. You can go ahead and you can be comparing what I'm doing right now on mobile that I didn't do on the top of the code in the style sheet, okay? So padding of 20 and 20, and then a font size here. The font size is going to be 30 pixels, okay? And I'm going to hit save. Now let's go back here and see how all this is going to change. Now I hit refresh and boom. Now everything has changed. Now in this example, I want this to look a little bit more impressive when they hover over this section. So let's say that we're going to change that. So when they hover, so the top nav, if they hover right over this, then what I want to do is add more padding. So the padding top and bottom will be 20 pixels, still the same, but it's going to be 60 pixels if from left to right. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. Now let's refresh. Just check out how it looks like right now. Now if I hit refresh, now let me hover over it again and you'll see. You see? Now the padding changes because it's 60 pixels from left to right, not 20 anymore. Okay? So when you hover, it moves. Okay, perfect. So that's the first thing you want to do. Now the next thing you want to do when applying the style here will be to, let's set up the first grid container. Yeah, the first grid container. Okay, so the grid container number 1, which is this one right here, holding this image and this text. We want to make sure that that changes because right now it looks terrible. So to the grid container 1, let's do that. To grid container, whoops. So to grid container 1, this one right here, we want the grid template columns to not be 2 anymore. To not be, actually we put on the top, I believe it was 5. So now it's only going to be 1. So I'm just going to add 1 auto here. And let's hit refresh. Also, remember that we changed on the top of the side here, on the very top of the side for grid container 1, the item 2, it goes from 2 to 6. So that's when right now I changed this to auto. I should be taking a look. I'm thinking, right, the image on top of the letters, but it's not, because on top of our code, I gave a different style to only this item in particular. So this item doesn't move unless I change also the item. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So I am going to say to item of grid 1, item number 2, I want this to also change. I want the grid column. Let's do the grid column, move from 1 to 2. Okay, so this way it's going to move to from line 1 to line 2. If you don't remember this, go to the grid chapter and I explained that in there. So let's save this, hit refresh, and boom, now it changed. You see? Now it's the image is on top of the text. Okay, next thing we want to do. Now we're going to go to grid container number 2, and in here, grid container number 2, we're going to use the header home. Yeah, the header home. That's how it's called. The header home. We are going to set up a margin to the left of 1% and a margin to the right of 1% as well. And I want to align the text to the center. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. Okay, so there you go. So now we just added a margin of 1% and we have aligned the text to the center. Grid container number 2 is the video, and it's already set up in 1. So the about section, which is this one right here, right now has 2 columns. So we want to change that to 1. So grid container number 3. Okay, we want to apply the grid template columns. These ones will change to only 1. So auto. Let's hit save. Went back to our code, refresh, and boom, you see? Now it's just 1 column, and then it breaks to the second one. Okay, so now let's change our 5th section, which is our services. Now our services, if I'm not mistaken, is grid container number 4. So let's use grid container number 4. Grid container number 4. Okay, there we go. So for grid container number 4, it's very simple. I just want to set up the grid columns, same as number 3 in auto. Okay, there. Now I'm going to hit save for grid 4, refresh, and boom, you see now it's automatic. Everything, it's one on top of the other because it's only one column. Now we don't have 3 separating each grid item. Hope that makes sense. If not, just leave your questions in the comment below. Okay, so that's for grid number 4. Oh, one thing I do want to change here is this thing. You see how it looks a little bit moved to the right? So I want that to be center, and for this we're going to use the services H1. I am going to set up a margin for this, margin to the left actually, and let's set it up at 22% because I already tested that one. So our services right now, it's moved to the right. Now as soon as I hit refresh, boom, now it's set up a little bit better. Now I can actually do 25%. Let's see how that looks. Refresh, whoops, save, refresh. I mean, it looks a little bit better. So let's just leave it there, okay? So right now our services is there. Now we're going to work in the contact us section because right now it looks horrible. It looks totally horrible. So for this content, actually for this section, which is number 6, and this is going to be the map, I am going to first change the grid container number 5. Yep, because we used the 4th. So grid container number 5. And this one, again, the grid template columns, whoops, the grid template columns is going to be auto because it's only one column that we need there. So let's hit refresh and let's scroll a little bit down, and there you go. So we have the form, which is a little bit not in a good place, and the map, it's a big map. So remember the map that we hide in our desktop view? We're going to bring that over and we're going to hide the first map, the big one. So I'm going to call map 1, iframe map 1. So to the first map now, I want the display to be none. I want to hide this one. Okay. And to the second map, map 2, okay, I want the display of this to be block, meaning I want to show now map 2. So I'm going to hit save. See the map right now, it's too big. Now as soon as I hit refresh, boom, the map now it's smaller. Now the map number 1 is hidden in map number 2. It's actually shown to the public. Okay, perfect. So now the next thing we are going to do here is give it a little bit of style to this container, because right now the container, it's not working properly. I mean, it's actually being on top of the footer. It looks terrible. So I am going to give to the form container some style. So let's do that right now. So let's do that here. To the form. So the form container, it's only called container. So to this container, we're going to set up a width of 100%, making sure that it's fit into its position. And also margin bottom of 50%, please. I don't want this to overlap with the next grid. Okay, so let's hit save. Now see how this is going to change. Refresh, and boom, now it has 50% of margin bottom. Okay, you will see 50%. Perfect. So now we have styled section number 6. Now the final section, which is number 7, which is the footer, we are also going to give some style to the grid container. So grid container 6, guess what we're going to do here? We're going to set up the grid template columns to auto as well. But also here, I want to make sure that the margin at the bottom is 10% for each column. Okay, so I'm going to hit refresh and boom. Each item in the bottom, the margin in the bottom here is 10%. Now if I want to remove that, I can. I definitely can do that. I can hit save and I am going to hit refresh. And see that now I don't have any margin at the bottom. So up to you if you want to leave it with a margin or not. I am going to leave it without a margin at the bottom for now. Okay, if I feel like I need it, I'll add it later on. Now the next thing we want to do is add style the footer links inside, because they look a little bit different than the original links. Like you see, they have been moved to the left again. So we want to change that right now. And it's very simple what we are going to do. We're simply going to add a padding from the left to 185 pixels. That's about the size actually that we need. So let's hit refresh and boom, you see now it's moved a little bit close to links. So to the footer links, now we have a padding from the left to 185 pixels right there. Perfect. So now our website has changed completely. Now it's very responsive. So hitting save to the code here, making it bigger now, you have a really nice website that as soon as you go ahead and you hit refresh, as soon as you get in there, you're going to watch this video, right? And then you're going to go to the about section, then you'll go to services and actually take a look at the services. Then you'll go to the contact us form, where you can see the hours of operations, a map, a form that you can contact them. And then finally the footer with their contact info and some certifications that this agency might have. And you did all of that being only a beginner here with HTML and CSS. Now, the other thing you did is also resize this window and make it responsive and also make it adjust to mobile and tablet views. It changes and everything is organized in a perfect way. Obviously, it always can be better, guys. I'm not saying this is an amazing website. This is just a website for me to give you as a gift as a beginner, so that you can have a foundation in where and how to go to about starting your own website, doing it in your own way. Remember that at w3schools.com they have a lot of templates in there. In fact, as I said, I use the form template from them in here, so you can go ahead and actually use that out. And you can go ahead and actually search more, I mean, if you want to make a website look really nice, you don't have to make up the code yourself. You can always go around in the web and Google up and actually use a Stack Overflow to search for answers, because we need that. I mean, if you are in the web development field, you will always need help, everyone. This is not something that you're going to learn from day to night and that you're going to be a professional at this. I mean, you will be very fluent if you study a lot, if you practice a lot, but it's not like you are going to know it all, because especially in programming languages, they are always updating. There's always a new version. So just make sure that you keep on studying, keep on practicing. And if you have questions, remember, you can leave them in the comment section below. I'll be more than happy to reply as soon as I can. So that was all for this video, everybody. If you like this video, remember to give me a thumbs up. That really helps me out. And if you have suggestions for my channel, you can also text me via Instagram, or you can leave your comments in the comment section below. I'll be reviewing them. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. And well, remember that you can always ask Lixi. Bye, everybody, and see you again in the next episode.